Ever wonder why you can play the same major pentatonic riff over all of the chord changes in the 12-bar blues without having to worry about the new key clashing with any of the notes? In this lesson, we'll cover what the major pentatonic is doing in all these contexts and why it's such good value for money. As ever, we'll be using HarpGuru to visualize what we're talking about here, and if you like what you see, then you can pick up HarpGuru in the Google Play Store and possibly the Apple App Store depending on when you're watching this. If you have any questions at all, then contact me in the comments below or in the email address in the description. Alright, enough of that, let's get to it. On the screen now we have the major pentatonic scale represented with its scale degrees highlighted, where the 1 in green is the root note of the scale on the 2-hole draw. That confirms that we're in second position. This lesson has a bit of theory to it, so to keep things simple, we're going to start in C, which means that we're going to need an F harmonica. A C major pentatonic is made up of C, D, E, G, and A, which is the same as a C major scale, but with the F and the B, which are the 4th and the 7th scale degrees, removed. If you need to review any of this, then have a look at my previous video introducing the major pentatonic scale. So it looks like we're playing a 12-bar blues in C. That means that our 1 chord is C, our 4 chord is F, and our 5 chord is G. You don't need to know that to follow this, but for those who are curious, it's possible to use this menu to understand what your root pitch will be when you play in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd position, which is the same thing as knowing what key you're in. On the current display, we can see that the scale degrees are represented on what at HarpGuru we call the harp face, with the associated notes represented on the left-hand legend. Let's swap that round and we'll see why in a moment. Now, the pitches are on the harp face and the degrees are in the legend. We still have C, D, E, G, and A highlighted, and in the legend it's clear that these are made up of the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 scale degrees. Alright, that's our setup done. Now we're trying to figure out what's so magical about these 5 notes that means that we can play them over all 3 chords in the 12-bar progression. Well, let's see what happens when we play these notes in 1st position, which is the 4 chord. The first thing to point out is that we still have C, D, E, G, and A highlighted on the harp face, but now you can see that the C on the 2-hole draw isn't the root note anymore. Now it's the 5th, which we can see from its associated colour in the left-hand legend. The next thing to point out is that with these 5 notes in 1st position, we are not playing our root note in this position, which would be the F that we removed at the beginning to make it a C pentatonic scale. You'd think that that would be a problem, but let's continue. Let's look at the scale degrees that we actually do have. The 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th are part of the major pentatonic anyway. They've each swapped which of our notes they're represented by, but it makes sense that they still sound good since they all still fulfill a function in the F major pentatonic scale over this 4 chord, as well as the C major pentatonic over the 1 chord. All of them, that is, except for the E, which is now fulfilling the role of a 7th. The 7th isn't part of the pentatonic, so why would this work? Well, consider that the 7th is a legitimate part of the full major scale, which ultimately is the complete foundation of the key that the chord is representing. With that in mind, it makes sense that it should work over this F major chord. Let's move on to the 3rd position. This time we do have our root, which is satisfied by the G note. And looking on the left, we can see that we no longer have the 7th, and we're also missing the 3rd, and instead we have our 4th, which is C. Again, the 4th is not part of the major pentatonic, but it is part of the major scale. So I think we have our answer. An answer anyway. Every note of a given key's major scale will fit over that key's major chord, naturally. And the major pentatonic in a given key has the interesting property of only containing notes of the major scale for the keys 1 position north or south of that key. And when I say north or south, I really mean clockwise or anti-clockwise, because really we're talking about the circle of fifths. This isn't essential, but if you do have the time and the inclination to look at the circle of fifths, you'll see that the pitches which constitute each scale change by 1 as you move each position round the circle. This is one of the reasons we're seeing what we're seeing here. And what it also means is that this is true regardless of what position you start from. Let's set up our major pentatonic in another position, say 9th, which you can see is awful, but luckily I'm not going to have to play it to make the point. The point is that if you move from 9th being our 1 chord to 8th being our 4 chord, we lose the root and gain the 7th, just like we did in 1st position. And if we go up to 10th position for the 5 chord, we replace the 7th with the root again and lose the 3rd in exchange for the 4th, just like when we moved up to 3rd before. One final point to make is that all of this breaks down as soon as we go 1 position further in either direction. Let's demonstrate back in 1st, 2nd and 3rd though, to leave this madness as quickly as possible. So moving past the 3rd to 4th, we get the flat 7, and moving past the 1st to 12th, we get the flat 5, neither of which are part of the major scale. Now, this doesn't mean that they won't sound good, but if they do, it will not be for the reason we've just been discussing here. Music's complex, there's lots of reasons that things sound good and bad, and it's just taken us 5 minutes to just talk about one of those reasons. So to summarize, we've found a good reason why the major pentatonic of the 1 chord works so well with the 4 and the 5 chord too, and it's because all 5 of the notes in the major pentatonic of the 1 chord are legit members of all of those 3 keys major scales. But what lessons can we draw from that? Well, the truth is that everything we learn about relationships in music are guidelines. The key is identifying what they are guidelines for, and well, the pentatonic is clearly a guideline for stability in this context. We can use it to build themes which will sound great no matter what part of the 12-bar blues progression we're in. And now that we know that, and knowing what we know from all the great lessons by teachers like Ronnie Shellist, who's always telling us to learn how to sit in the pocket, build themes through repetition, and concepts like what we've touched on today, and then mix it up with deviations from this theme and stability. Now that we know better where that stability comes from, we're in a much better position to put all of that advice into action. We'll be going over some ideas for what that actually looks like in later videos. Alright, brain dump over. I hope that was interesting and understandable. If you got it, then well done, let's build on it. If you didn't, then watch it again. You'll get it, and if you don't, then get in touch. Let's lay out some more foundations or something, okay? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps me out. And download HarpGuru. Get it now before it's cool. And let me know if you have any specific lesson requests. I'll be happy to help. See you in the next video.